What's going on, everybody? Thank y'all for tuning in again to Black Dad Unfiltered. I'm carlosVspencer here with my guy, Coach Rob. What's going on, baby?
Keeping the main thing the main thing. Feel
You
good, man. I feel
you looking
good.
good, brother. You looking good. Those of you who are watching, if you're listening, you just got to take my word on
Listen, I'm trying to age well, brother. I'm
it.
trying to
Listen,
age well.
you're doing well, man. The $1 million smile.
Embracing the grays, embracing them.
Most definitely, most
There's a,
definitely.
new, there's a new phase here. You know what I mean? I'm walking these streets. People are like, "Ooh, salt and pepper." I'm like, "Wow, okay, be
They
careful.
call,
Be a
they
little
call
bit
you they call
spicy."
you Zaddy yet? They call you Zaddy yet? Not yet. Not yet.
They be like, "That's a grown man right there." Sure, you right. Let's stop playing around.
Sure
But
you're right. Sure you're right. But listen, man, two black fathers, man, Black Dad Unfiltered. Again, thank you for those of you who've been tuning in, whether you've been watching on social media, YouTube, or other platforms, or you've been listening in to us. We appreciate you chiming in. We've been doing this topic on multiple topics. So go back. Once you get into this topic today, this isn't the first day we started this off. So if this is the first time you're hearing us talk about this particular topic, I want you to go back and listen to a few of the episodes before, because we definitely dive into a couple different segments on this specific topic, because it was just so vast. It was way more than we could just complete in one sitting session. So we decided to bite it up, to piece it up, to go into different parts of it. As always, click the subscribe, download if you're listening in on the podcast as well, and send in your comments, questions. If you find us on social media, as you know, those of you who've been watching and listening in, we're not just coming up with these topics ourselves. We've actually sent out a poll, and we got these topics back of what people want to hear: Black fathers, mothers, single moms, single dads, husbands, wives, people in relationships, sons, daughters. We sent this out to many different people, and these are different topics they want to talk about. So, man, with that being said, man, how's it feel to be a black father? I'm just going to ask you that before we jump into our first segment today.
listen, man. I think we're both on the same page, and I hope everyone's on the same page with this. I love being a dad. I love being a dad. My mindset is different as you get older. You get a little bit wiser, and you're cherishing every moment, and you're finding joy in the little things.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I had a vision, and I was on that hamster wheel trying to make sure that I executed on the vision that I have for my kids. Now it's just a matter of let's just play cards and laugh, and my kids make me laugh, and so again, it's probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've had is being a father to my children specifically. So I'm feeling good about this, bro.
Yeah, interesting you said, man. Before we jump to our first segment, I was talking to, I have 5 children. So I
Mm-hmm.
was talking to one of my sons.
I feel like Kevin Hart. Dang!
And I love it. And I love it, man. I love it. I truly do. And my second to youngest son, to a testament of what you just said, Coach Rod, one of his coaches told him to ask his father, what does it feel like being a father? And I was like, yo, so dope. And my answer was very similar to what you said. What I said to him, my son Caleb, I said, buddy, it's the best feeling in the world. It's the greatest thing in
Yeah.
the world. Like, it's the greatest gift that you could ever get. And it's the thing that makes me the most proud. Is
Mm-hmm.
being the father. And you
Yeah.
can tell the person who told him to ask this question, they had this same type of feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure. What is it? It's their wins, even though they don't see it, are like as if they won the Olympics to you. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
my daughter uh just did a performance, a vocal performance, and I can remember when she was so shy, she wouldn't talk to anyone, and just standing there in front of people and singing. To her, she was just singing a song she liked. To me, I was seeing evolution and just taking joy and pride in who she's becoming, and I'm being compelled to just sit down and be like, I'm so proud of you. So again, if you got the right mindset, if you make the main thing, parenthood is dope. Not just black kids, it's dope, period. But I'm fortunate that I have, 3 black children that I get to see navigate the adversity and overcome it. So I'm extremely proud. That's for sure.
This too, man, just triggering so many thoughts. And I won't stay here too long, but for me, my father passed away when I was 19.
Hmm.
So my oldest child, which is my son, is the oldest. He's 21 now. And so I'm getting an opportunity to do things with my son that I never got a chance to do with my father.
Mm.
right? And I could never see this. And I saw this in little glimpses and spaces where my children were growing up, but it's like, wow, how only God could cause you to get the experience back that you missed out with your father by going through it with your son. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't figure that out, right? So I'm at my son's graduation. My son's now 21, like I said, and I'm having conversations with him about being a man. And it's like I get a chance to get that experience back that I never had with my father, right? I'm like, wow. So there's some things that I never knew what it was like to be 21 with my father.
Mm.
I never knew that
Yeah.
because my father just wasn't living anymore. So I thank God for that, man. I thank God in His infinite wisdom that He's able to give me back experiences that I didn't have. Man, I don't want to say this, but I gotta say it. I will say too, for me, with my children reaching a certain age, because somebody's listening in, somebody's watching in, maybe feeling the same way. Since my dad passed when I was 19, I was like, how am I going to know how to father my children past the age of 19?
Sure.
Just something internally, just
Yeah.
something was there, man. It's
Yeah.
just very different. But to the testament of this show, myself, you, I watch you as a father, and the other fathers that we've talked to and surround ourselves with.
Of course.
I get an opportunity to have those conversations with them to help me along the way.
Mm-hmm.
My brother has his son is probably almost mid-20s now, and so I go to my brother a lot, and I ask him questions because he's dealt with some of the stuff that I'm dealing with already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it makes sense.
Yeah.
Of course it makes sense. Conversely, I take a different approach with my son, right? I'm just taking it as is. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to see who you're becoming. So I'm giving
Yeah.
you space. Uh, but funny, raising my daughters, even though this is not about raising daughters yet, because that's another show we're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Raising my daughters is where I really go to other parents and
Mm.
say, okay, how am I going to navigate this? Because
Mm.
I have never been a daughter.
Yeah, that's true.
I've never been a daughter. So with my son, it's funny you say that, right? Because I can remember, my son is 18 going on 19. I can remember the looks my father would have on his face. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, boy. You know? So now that I'm going through it, I'm like, oh, this is par for the course.
Yo.
Try this out. But the daughters is different because, the mindset as a black man, I'm gonna protect you at all costs. But these are going to be individual people that got to make their own decisions, want to live their own lives. And I'm sitting here like, I got to protect you. I want you to know what love is. So I've loved you from the time you were born. I've been your significant other from the time you were born. I'm not ready to let that go. So these are things that I'm struggling with right now.
Mhm.
And that's why I talk to you. Like, Los, you got two daughters. Talk me through this. I remember one time when you told me your daughter was going on a date, I passed out on the other end. I said, "What? You okay with this?" I think she was 18. I'm like, "You okay with this?"
Listen, bro, my second daughter just went to the prom and she sent me the prom pictures, and I'm like, man, oh man.
Listen, my daughter just sent me my 15. Dad, I need you to approve this dress. It was some backless. The minute I read backless, man, you better go ahead with someplace with this. You're 15. We're not doing it.
Oh. So, man, listen, while we break into this first segment, you said something to kind of go right into it. You said, how can I protect you? How am I going to protect you?
Mm-hmm.
This is our first segment. The segment of the day. Those of you who've been watching and listening in, you know we go here first. Those of you watching and listening in for the first time, generally we go to something. Maybe it is a black father in the public eye, or just a popular event in the public eye. And this, in particular, in talking about how am I going to protect my children, comes from Cam Newton. If you watch Club Shay Shay, he has a famous podcast. Shannon Sharp. He's a retired NFL player, has a really, really productive, really good podcast. And he interviewed Cam Newton.
Mm-hmm.
And in interviewing Cam Newton went into a specific part where he was talking about his father.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show this clip real quick here. And after we show this clip, we're going to break into a little bit of conversation of Cam Newton and what he says about his father and about his father protecting him and just some different things that go on. Take a listen in.
It was me, my mom, and my dad, and Coach Chiswick sitting across from us. And, Coach Chiswick, hey, I just want to let y'all know it's about to be a report that comes out that a scandal and the NCAA is about to do an investigation on you guys' family. So we looking around like, on who? For what? Say, there's a report that you guys took money to come here. So I'm like, okay, cool. how much we talking? Like, boom. He said 180,000. Looked at my mama looked at me. We bust out laughing. Are you serious? Like, for real. We laughing. Coach Chiswick ain't laughing. I was like, oh, you for real? Level. And my father jumped on that grenade. Knowing good and well he ain't take no money. Knowing good and well, he said, look, how can we allow my son to play? Well, we're gonna need somebody to take this rap. My father said, without blinking, I take it. Paint me however you want to paint me.
Right.
I'll do it for my son. He gonna be eligible to play? Cool. I'll take it. Well, Cecil, you can't come to no more games. And still to this day, it was told during the Heisman ceremony, they said, I think it's best for you not to show up for that. I took that personal. And
the person that meant the most, that had the greatest impact on Cam Newton, the player, the man that he became at his highest moment to date, the man that meant so much to you couldn't be there to share it with you.
I could not share the moment.
So if you listened in with that interview, again, that's Cam Newton. If you're not a sports fan, you may not know who that is. If you watch football, shame on you if you don't know who that is. But Cam Newton played at the University of Auburn. Well, that was his last stint. He played at junior college. He also went to the University of Florida before that. And he played in the NFL as well. First pick, not just first round pick. He was a first pick, also an MVP in the NFL. But in this particular segment, I kind of want to know what some people's questions might be, or some dialogue that we want to pull out from Cam Newton. He's sitting in front of his college coach, and in front of his college coach, he's with his mom and his dad. And so there were some allegations before Cam Newton came to the University of Auburn that he took money, or his family took money. And what Cam said in that interview, he was like, we didn't take no money. And so they had these allegations going on, had this background investigation. He couldn't play ball for his time. And I think he even said he was ineligible for 1 day. In this conversation, he says, or his father says, talking about black dads unfiltered, his black father says, well, what do we have to do? And then they say, well, somebody got to take the rap for this.
Facts.
For my son to be able to play. And so Newton's father says, so if I take the rap for this, my son can play. They said, yeah. They said, okay, well, I'll take the rap for it. Knowing he didn't do it, he voluntarily took the rap for it, and he could never come to any one of his son's home games. A lot to unpack there. I've said a lot, but man, I want you to dive into it, Coach Rod, as well, because we're talking about fathers protecting. We're talking about law enforcement. We're going to get to that a little bit later, because this was an investigation, and a lot of things coming on, a lot of law enforcement, law, a lot of stuff that took place in this interview. What's some stuff you pulled out of this, man, when you're talking about black dads protection?
First and foremost, that was a smooth transition. How you picked up when I said protection and you brought up the Cam. I want to shout you out for that. But I think you did a good wrap up of it, right? But before we get into the protection, I really want to lay down the foundation for the role of a father in this particular scenario, right? Because we just watched the clip. First thing he said, his father was a man of God. We cannot overstate that. He trusts his father implicitly. You follow what I'm saying? So when we talk about how to raise a black son, we're going to get into that a little bit later, but we got to talk about the relationship a father and son can have, where the son will trust you, right? And so at some point, we got to talk about how was that foundation laid, right? Because that's not a given, right? And he also talked about his father repeatedly challenging him to be a man from the age of 7. In society nowadays, that may be frowned upon, right? But let's fast forward, because I want to talk about that, but maybe we could talk about that on a different show, or maybe at the end of this one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we understated exactly what happened to the father, because again, let's frame this. We said Auburn, but this is really Southeast Conference, the SEC. For those who don't understand, it is the most competitive, the most loyal fan base in all of college football, right? These are the states that football itself is one of the main economic driving forces in that state. And so that tells you the weight of a college in terms of economics in that state. And so when we mention Auburn versus Alabama or any of those other schools, it is no longer a football game. It is a social event. It is almost the clash of political parties. The reason why I'm framing this is when his dad took the fall, it's not that he got banned from the game. He became a social pariah. So you have to understand, when his father said, I will take the rap, it wasn't that you can blame me. I will take every scrutiny. I will take every harassment. I will take every racial slur. I will take all of the media news cycle, ESPN 24 hours, ruining my last name so my son can pursue his dream.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what I want to draw out of that, Los, was when I heard that, I was like, wow. And I had to ask myself, would I have done the same? Because again, what we're talking, when we talk about college sports, in some places it's a game. In other places, and I don't want to make this trivial, it's not life and death, but it can get close to that, right? And do your homework. You can look this up. You'll see what happens to certain students, the harassment and so forth. So when I saw that, I was just like, wow. But more importantly, it was how the son memorialized that in his mind. You know what I mean? Just count how many times he said, my dad, pops, right? And then, so that brought us back to this conversation of how do you protect your child? How do you be the shield for your child? How do you raise your child, right? To be able to stand on their own 2 feet and say, I've done nothing wrong. And more importantly, when society is telling you, well, we believe you did, which is, Los, this is common in our community. Someone has to step up and say, you know what I mean? I'm going to take this. So, I mean, it's just so much when I read it. So I'm just telling you my first responses when I first saw the video. I was like, wow.
For me too, with him, one thing I love that I want to draw out to as well is you hear so often about fathers, especially the Black fathers, not being there, not being present, not taking care of your responsibility, not raising your child. You hear so many other nots, right? And I believe Oprah Winfrey did an interview, and she kind of put to bed that disparity of Black fathers are not there, and statistics actually show that Black fathers are more caring and more present. But I love that this showed a Black father who was present, who was there when it happened, and who was there to be able to step up and did step up. For me, you and I played college football together.
You played. I was on the team. Let's not mislead our listeners, Los.
Yeah, we're on the same team. We're on the same team.
I can't play 1 or 2 downs, but
what I'll say though is, man, for me, I've often said this to people. So I came on as a freshman walk on. For those of you who don't know what that means, is I've walked on and pretty much tried out, earned a spot on the team, played my freshman year, started some games my freshman year, ended up starting full time my sophomore year, right? And into that, I wasn't on scholarship. Wasn't on scholarship my freshman year. I'm starting and wasn't on scholarship my sophomore year to the second half of my sophomore year. And I often say, if my father was in my life, now my father had passed away. I said, if my father was in my life, there's no way that my father wouldn't have spoken up for me and made me realize, hey, son, they're taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
Like, you need to speak up for yourself. So my father wasn't there. His father was there. His father was present. His Black father said, I'm going to take the rap for this. Knowing that he didn't take the money, but he was willing to do whatever he had to do in order to make his son's life easier. I often say this to people. If my child's life, my son's life, my daughter's life isn't easier, what's the purpose of me being here? Like, not that they didn't want to have to deal with nothing, but it should be a little easier. So for me, one of the things that I really drew out from this story that I did not know before seeing Cam Newton talk about it firsthand himself is that his father was present and that his father took the rap to the point where, like you said, the scrutiny, the disgrace, pulling down your name, to the point where I will honestly say on Black Dad Unfiltered,
Mhm.
I thought his father took the money back then.
So,
I remember when this was going on.
Los, that's a conversation for another day because we can get into media. You know,
Mhm.
media. It don't take much to paint a villain black. I'll let you unpack that. It don't take much, right? So I never know what happens, right? Because once the story takes off, it takes off. But another piece, and this is probably going to be another topic for another day. One of the things that I listened when I watched that was mom and dad.
Yes, yes,
Mom and dad.
yes.
Doesn't mean everyone's, but he came from a family, you know what I mean? And we got to get to the point where we talk about the importance of family when it comes to raising black sons. Whatever family looks like, because I believe we raise children in community. You were raised with your aunts, uncles, cousins, you know what I mean? And once people get to know you on the show, they're going to find out a little bit more about your history and how magnificent you are. You know what I mean? If I do say so myself, like one of my closest friends, that community helped raise a black man. Same, and so I was fascinated about that. I was saddened because
Yeah.
the truth is, one, statistically, when black fathers are there, they're present, but oftentimes systematically they're not there. Right? We get to mass incarceration and these conversations.
Mhm.
Because who is sticking up? Remember one of the shows I talked about how I would go to this kid's school and be like, my son ain't doing this no more. He not apologizing to a single person. You can take these notes, he ain't writing them. It's not gonna happen no more. Even down to sports. I like, son, you too good. We're not paying for this. I'm like, we're not paying for this. All right. So little things like that. But I just keep thinking about Cam Newton, and I probably got a little envious if I'm being candid, because I'm like,
Wow.
will my son talk about me like this?
Wow.
When
Because
he gets
his father, he bigged up his father.
he boycotts the Heisman ceremony because of what he believes, what he knows was disrespect to his father.
Right, because they said his father, they wouldn't allow his father to come.
They suggested it. They said maybe it's not a good look. And again, father true to form, I'm not going to take away from my son's spotlight.
Man,
Right?
that really hurt Cam. And to your point, Cam Newton's like, okay, well, I'm not going to the Heisman Trophy.
Right. So to hear him talk about his dad like that, and one of the lessons that I drew out, because again, we talked a few episodes back about how I struggle. Because it's a new age. I can't raise my son the way I was raised. And I didn't like when my father raised me the way he was raised. Right? Well, as I got older, I started looking and saying, wow, I'm glad my father did that, because I probably would have been in a whole lot of trouble had there not been someone that I feared more than life itself. You know what I mean?
Can I?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
On an unfiltered,
Go ahead.
there are times I'm envious and stuff like that. So like you said, man, will my son talk about me the way that Cam Newton is talking about his father? For those of us who don't have fathers, and I love to hear you talk about it. But I'm like, dang, man, I wish I could have that conversation about my dad. Like, I wish I can go have a conversation with my father. When I don't know if you ever seen that post or this meme or this question. Hey, if you could sit down on the bench, somebody who's dead or alive, if you could have a conversation with one person, who would that person be? For me, it's always my father. I would sit down and have a conversation with my father. So sometimes I'm envious of that, man, of other people, especially black men who have black fathers. Now, when I say envious, it's not jealousy. I don't want it for me and not for you. I wish I had it for me.
Yeah, because so again, I'll never understand, right? Never understand how you did it. Because I've always said from the time we started playing football together, I've never looked up to somebody my own age ever in my life until you. And I was like, man, this brother got it together. But I won't lie to you. As I'm older now, I enjoy talking to my dad. I enjoy the stories of our culture. And now that I'm older, my parents cuss like there's nobody's business in front of me. When I was younger, anybody cursing, right? Now it's like, so it's funny and it's comical.
Uh-huh.
I remember my father said this to me one time, and I know we want to get into law enforcement,
Mhm.
and this really affected me because for my children, I did whatever I could to get them wherever they needed to be to kind of experience life and exposure. And my father would say to me, "I don't know how you do it, son. Sometimes I'm talking to your mother, and I'm worried for you because I don't know how you keep up this grind." And to me, that was as good as saying, "I'm proud of you, son."
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I get what you're saying. Because again, in hindsight, 2020, listen, I didn't like it growing up. I didn't like it. Like,
Yeah.
if I didn't say yes, dad, it was a problem. This is back in the day when teachers could still hit you at school.
Uh-huh.
And I realized that, but growing up, that was allowed.
Yeah.
So you getting spanked at home. So you didn't say yes, dad. It was a problem.
Listen.
And if you came in the house and you didn't shake his hand, it was a bigger problem. So I grew up with this, and
Yeah.
then in hindsight, when I look at my peers, it's just like, okay, you guys lack discipline. You lack structure,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I'm grateful to my dad because from where I grew up, a lot of people I grew up with, because there was no discipline, there was no structure, there was no sense of codified morals and ethics and values in terms of this is what's enforced in you.
Mhm.
I was able to accomplish whatever I accomplished in life, and I'm excited about that. But this is really about Cam. But you see how we were drawn to that conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what I'm talking about. This is the stories that people need to hear about us
Yeah.
fathers.
Yes.
We're gonna lose sleep if we got to get you to school in 8 hour drive. Don't worry, no matter how tired we are, we're gonna get you there. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, man. And I'll say this for somebody watching, somebody listening in, especially you're a black man, and if say you're a black man who's an adult or maybe even a young adult, even younger, have a conversation with your father and don't take it for granted. Because as I hear you saying, man, I enjoy the conversations with my father. What I hear is this is something that you're cherishing, that you're aware of, and that man, I'm going to remember this. Only thing I can attest that to is when I was in the space of awareness is my grandfather. So my grandfather, when he was older and unfortunately diagnosed with cancer, and then so you just start to see him age. Although when he was older, you just never saw it until you went to the hospital. And so my grandfather had a very thin grade of hair, but he couldn't comb his hair. And I'll never forget this. It was just me and him at the house. And so he asked me to come into the bathroom and to comb his hair. And I knew in that moment that this is going to be something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life
Of course.
because I was old enough to be aware enough to put myself in a space to appreciate that moment and lock it away. And I remember combing his hair, just because he just couldn't reach it. He still could walk, still could move around, but he just couldn't reach it. And I was like, yo, I'm gonna remember to the day I die that I got a chance to comb my grandfather's hair. I bring that up because when I heard you and when I saw you talking about that, I think that some fathers, and I'll definitely say some black fathers or black sons, even more particular, because they have a father, they're not aware of what they have.
Yeah.
And they don't recognize it until what they have is gone. So
Mhm.
I just want to take this time off somebody listening, somebody watching to say, yo, and I'm not saying you're not having a conversation, you're not in a relationship with your dad. If you're not, hopefully you can. But if you are, I'm just saying be aware of
Sure.
the treasure that you have. Be aware of a man like myself who's good and grown and have adult children as well as young ones who wishes that I could have a conversation with my black father.
Mhm.
Like, so for what it's worth, if you're hearing this part of this segment, whether you be a son or or daughter, go have a conversation with your black father. And when you do, be aware of it. Be aware.
Conversely, before we get into our topic, if you're a black dad, engage your children in the conversations. Engage them.
I
I
like
told you I started off by saying I laugh with my kids. One of the things that I'm a little comedian. One of the things that I love is making my parents laugh. There's no greater joy because I'm still a kid. it don't matter how old I am, I'm still their kid.
Yeah.
And so I can make them bust out laughing. It brings me a great sense of joy, right? Because you can see them enjoying life. You can see them enjoying family. And I also laugh with my children.
Hmm.
My kids can make me laugh. Just have that balance of, trying to teach, but also just be in the moment. And if just show your kids that they are people to you, because that can help the appreciation of who you are in their lives. I love my youngest daughter. She's the only one that does this though. But like when she says daddy, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's just like she's still 4 years old to me. Even
Hmm.
though she's going to be 14. She's like still 3 or 4. Like I'm still daddy.
Hmm.
And so again, I enjoy that. But let's get back to talking about protecting these little young seeds of ours.
Listen, protecting them, like you said, having conversations with them. I love that you brought in the side of, hey, fathers, engage and have these conversations. Let's segue into this second half. The second half of the segment, which is our topic of the day. Our topic of the day is how to raise
Mhm.
black sons in America. And the subtopic of that is navigating law enforcement interaction. So if you've been watching for the last couple of weeks, like we stated earlier, these last couple of weeks we've been dealing with how to raise black sons in America.
Mhm.
And since that is such a big topic and there's so many different things you can tackle, we made a decision to break it up in different spaces. And today we're dealing with navigating law enforcement interaction. While we're going into that topic, I will say I was a police officer. I was a New York State trooper. Look it up, Google it. I was I ain't just saying this. I was a New York State trooper. I was a New York State police officer. Went to an academy for 6 months. I've been to robberies. I've been to burglaries. I've been to not homicides. Have I? No, not homicides. But I've been to domestics. I've been to traffic stops. I've been to traffic stops. Unfortunately, where somebody was dead. I've been to calls where people had committed suicide. I've been to calls where there were shots fired, where we were on the call. We were on the call for about 3 or 4 hours trying to get somebody out. I say that to say, not only are we speaking about this, especially as black men who've dealt with and had encounters with law enforcement, but I've also had the opportunity to be on the other side of it, to see some things that are different from a different lens, but also to see some things that say we definitely shouldn't be treated this way. A lot to say, but man, okay, we jumping into it. How to raise black sons in America, navigating law enforcement. Man, what jumps out at you?
So first, me, I always like to, lay down some foundation,
Yeah.
right? Because you set it up perfectly. First, we got to state the importance of why we're talking about this. Because ultimately, as a black person, going up against an institution that is designed to oppress you,
Hmm.
right? You have to talk about the oppressive mechanisms in place, right? Access to education, access to finance, and then there's the enforcement component, right? And so this is why I like having this conversation with you, because again, being my best friend, I know you. It's like, well, no, this doesn't apply. First, we know not all cops are bad.
Hmm.
But this doesn't apply to those. But when we talk about the legal system, law enforcement, we're talking about the law enforcement supported by the judicial system. So ultimately, if you're raising a black child, you have to start thinking about, how am I going to protect my black child against the very systems that are designed, that should be designed to protect them? It's almost counterintuitive.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to unpack that, because again, I think was it our last show, you talked about being put on a hood, gun to your face. For me, I've never had crazy, police encounters. One time, cops pulled me and my friend over, told me I looked like Wesley Snipes, which pissed me off, and I told them he looked like Larry Bird, and then they let me go. You know what I mean? It was a comical exchange.
Yeah.
Uh, I've had a few cops pull me over and give me tickets that were unwarranted.
Hmm.
It's like, wait a minute, and going to courts and realizing no matter what, I won't win. Once a cop says it and they write it down, it is what it is. But I am concerned because, again, my son, I've already mentioned, and I'm not trying to put him out there too much, but I've seen enough encounters that he's experienced
Yeah.
to say, son, my biggest fear is that it's going to come down to the police.
Hmm.
If it comes down to the police, I don't know if you're going to have the 2 or 3 seconds to breathe before an action is taking place. And this is not just based on media. This is just based on what I see every day him walking the streets of Brooklyn, right? Whenever there's an altercation, and if you meet my son, it's just like, this isn't a kid that looks for trouble. Not to say we look for trouble, but it's a concern I have. You know what I mean? And so I really want to just kind of Q&A you and let you know what goes, kind of figure out what goes into the mind of an officer, because there's some data, right? Black men are 20% more likely to get pulled over than a white person by a police officer. Right? And actually, I want to cite the source, right, in case anybody wants to fact check us.
Okay.
I pulled this up. According to a 2020 report by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, black drivers are about 20% more likely than white drivers to be stopped by the police. Second statistic, which really got me. A study from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that black men are 2.5 times more likely than white men to be killed by police during their lifetime. Right? You and I growing up in urban communities, this isn't make-believe. This is real life. So now, as a black parent, how do we again protect our children from this very same people that have been deputized to enact the law? You know what I mean? So I'm talking to you, Los. Talk to me.
So, man, for one, I think we said it before, and I'm not saying this because it's like, oh, we got to make sure we're politically correct or make sure that they feel like we're not attacking them. But I'm saying that all police aren't bad, because I've worked with police officers, right? I often heard this said, like, what qualifies you to be in the front of the room? When you hear somebody in the front of the room, a speaker or such, talking about something, there has to be something that qualifies you, right? I've heard Ray Lewis talking about being an NFL champion. What qualifies you? Because I've been an NFL champion, right? So what qualifies me to be able to say that and to say this, or what we're talking about, is I've been a police officer. I've worked with some police officers who were rookies on the job day one out of academy and were just like phenomenal. Like, I don't even know how to be this type of police officer. I've also worked with some police officers who would not have dealt with me had I not had the uniform on, because they were racist. So I've seen that firsthand too. So I do say there are some great police officers out there, but there are some bad seeds out there as well. There are some other people out there as well who aren't doing right. So to your question, like, how do we prepare our sons? How do we raise them? We have to have the conversation. We have to have the conversation with our black sons in particular, because that's what we're talking about. As I have had with my son, especially my 21-year-old, my younger one is 10 and about to be 12. Haven't had this conversation yet about driving, but I've had the conversation with my 21-year-old of when you get pulled over, not if you get pulled over. Right? And you know exactly what I'm talking about. And those who are listening and watching know what I'm talking about. Not, hey, son, if you get pulled over. No, son, when you get pulled over, this is what I need you to do. And one of the reasons why I believe we need to have the conversation with our sons is be able to give them information and data and something to pull from, so that when this does happen to them, they have some type of information as to how to move to keep themselves safe. Like, flat out, because I don't want my son to be pulled over, something to happen, and then I got a Monday morning quarterback him, which means, after the incident has happened, let me help you, teach you through this. Now, I can't prepare you for everything that's going to happen, but I want to have the conversation with my black son. So when he is pulled over, unfortunately, and pulled over for maybe not doing anything at all, like you said, I don't want to put it in the police officer's hand alone. I want my son to have some information. Information is power, right? They say knowledge is power, applied knowledge. So I want to give my son knowledge. To me, it's like a multiple choice exam, right?
Sure.
If you only got one choice and it's a multiple choice exam, you're going to choose that one choice. But if you have other options, now you have the ability to choose from the other options. So for me, I want to give my son the other options of, hey, son, make sure you're doing this. Hey, son, make sure you're turning the light on. We're talking about being pulled over in particular. Make sure that your hands are where the police officer can actually see them. Make sure you aren't making any fast or sudden movements. Make sure you aren't putting yourself in a position where this officer may be afraid. Now, somebody hearing this might be saying, well, you got to do all this to make sure the officer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You know what I'm saying? Why we got to do all this? No, you're doing all this so that you can be safe. And I'll unpack that other side as we talk about this.
You kind of took the sail out of my wind because I was like, man, listen, what? Because that's a lot of it's our responsibility now. So the police officer's job is to carry out justice, right? To uphold the law.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard you talk, all I can say to myself is, I have to do their job for them. Not do their job for them, but I have to make them as a black person, have to make you as comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
That I can walk out with my life.
Yeah.
And I don't quite know if my counterparts have to do just as much work, right? And
They don't. But go ahead.
But you see, but that's the problem then, right? That's the problem. So you said this before. When people look at this, they're not going to confuse us for anything else but black, right? So by the act of me being born, I am already, once I come of age, in a position that I must always protect my life, right? So that makes it tough for me, right? Because when you say, okay, make sure no sudden movements, make sure your hand is on the board, make sure this, make sure that, people don't realize the anxiety you have as a black man. Because remember, law enforcement doesn't start with the police. It starts with the teacher. It starts with the daycare. It starts with, from the time you were little, everyone punishing you for every act. Because remember, this is a topic for another show. As black children, you're not giving much leeway to be children. In society. In your family, sure. In society, not. Remember, I told you the story. Teachers used to say, your son's a big man. I said, no, he's a 12-year-old kid.
Right.
And so when you start thinking about the psychological damage that's constantly being, perpetuated on our children, when you get in that situation, how can you remain calm? This is why I said this is bigger to me. This is bigger. And then now I get into the situation. I've done nothing wrong. And now I have to fight, not metaphorically, to make sure that I can get out of this. I am at the mercy of a police officer. And I don't know the statistics of how many police officers are black, white, Hispanic. I don't care. But I'm at the mercy of what you feel that day.
So
my counterpart is not at that same mercy.
Right. Can I say this?
Go ahead, talk, man. It's your show. It's half your
show. So let me paint this picture. And this is what, again, this does not excuse bad behavior. This does not excuse injustice. This does not excuse prejudice or racism.
Sure.
But picture this, and I only know this because I've been on the other side. So picture it's 2:00 in the morning. I got a car pulled over on the highway. There's no street lights. There's no traffic lights. It's pitch black dark outside. 2 in the morning. You got a car pulled over. Your car is behind them. You're walking up to approach this car. You have no idea if this is a 98-year-old woman or if this is somebody who just escaped out of jail and they're a felon. You have no idea.
Agreed.
You're approaching this car. Say it again.
I agree. I'm following the scenario.
You're approaching this car and you have no idea. So your adrenaline is already pumping, beating. Your heart is pounding. Your hand is braced towards your arm, your firearm, right? Just in case. You don't got it out. You aren't trained to have it out, pull it out, but you are trained to have nothing into your firearm, your hand, right? Your dominant hand. Nothing is in your dominant hand. Your dominant hand is free, just in case at a split second, you got to pull that gun out. So you're approaching this car with all these things going on, and you have to make a split second decision as to if you're safe and if this person is safe while you're paying attention to all these things going on. So when I'm telling my son to do these things, I'm telling him to do these things, not just to put somebody at ease and to make them feel okay, but to understand that this person is in a heightened space. So you don't want to do something that causes them to get into an even higher space to do something stupid. Is that your fault? No, it's not your fault. But it's a way to keep yourself safer. So when I'm approaching this car, I see somebody moving around and the light is off and they flicking around like what's going through my mind? Are they reaching for a gun? Are they reaching for their license? Are they reaching for that? So had I never been put in that position, if I heard somebody say this, I'd be like, I don't know about all that. But I've done that.
No, listen. I think any reasonable person listening to you can understand that.
Mhm.
But my counter to that is this:
Yep.
I'm pulled over. I've done nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
My adrenaline is pumping.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this cop is going to come to me and actually, one, be honest, be a good cop, or am I about to have a bad day with somebody at 2 a.m. in the morning and there's no one around to see if this man shot me dead,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's what happens to me, right? When my heart pumps and I'm sitting here like, oh, holy shoot. Or I'm in the backwoods of Pennsylvania, or these places where you know they can just drop you and the deer are going to have fun with your carcass,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so to me, it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I got to respect the fact that the police officer's job is dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
right? They run towards danger while the average human being runs away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I respect that. But I think the bigger issue is, let's not paint the scenario at 2 o'clock in the morning. Let's paint the scenario 1 o'clock in the afternoon, broad middle of the day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. And then where are you going? I
Mhm.
remember one time, this is when I was a youth minister, and I was taking the kids, the youth, to a live musical performance. I said, let's go. I'm going to take you to the city. We're going to go see a live musical performance. And we go through the train, right? Police officer stops me, accuses me of jumping the turnstile with one of the kids. I said, yeah, I didn't do that. And the level of aggression that he had towards me. And at that moment, I'm sitting here like, what am I going to do? Because I got 6 young kids with me, right? And then he grabs my Metro card, grabs her Metro card, goes to the booth, and I'm sitting here like, everyone be cool, be cool. The fact I haven't had to say that to kids, because now they scared.
Mm-hmm.
We're afraid because we know that this person can get away with whatever they want. That's what we feel. We don't know. That's what we feel. Let me correct myself. If those Metro cards did not show the timestamp, I would have been, to me, screwed.
Mm-hmm.
But after he knew he was wrong, the way he still degraded us after the fact, and I said, well, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I said, good Lord. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
this there and say, you and I are grown adults, and I think we want to talk about some mechanisms, but this is the stuff that I sit there and say, I'm afraid because my son, go ahead.
To your point, and I'm glad you said that. I believe a lot of police officers get it wrong, way wrong, in situations and scenarios like that because there's no reason for it. In a situation like that, you should know as a grown adult police officer that I don't have to treat this person like this. One, two, well, I can't say they would know it. The benefit that I have as a black man is I know what it feels like on that side.
Mm.
I know what it feels like for the person in the car whose heart is beating. I've approached cars and I saw the relief on the person's face when they saw that it was a black police officer pulling them over. And I was able to have conversations with people on the side of the road to help them get more calm again, because I understood that they were dealing with all of these things.
Yeah.
One. And I also believe that some people, and a lot of police officers, and a lot of white police officers as well, I ain't saying all, they take it to their head. They take the power to their head. And now, like for your example, you had some power struggle. You knew the situation. You knew everything was okay, and now you still want to give. He wants to give you an attitude for what? What are you trying to prove? There's something going on in you that you need to deal with yourself, so you're not abusing your power or abusing that situation. And unfortunately, that's what you see in a lot of situations. Somebody's abusing their power. I've been in situations where a police officer, instead of de-escalating the situation, they escalated it. So it's like we're here and you talking to somebody and you can get the situation to calm down, but yet you choose to push buttons to cause the situation to go up. So it's something we can talk about. I want to talk about the daylight 1 o'clock thing, but you go ahead and say something. I want to cut you
I
off.
want to chime into that because I'm looking at the time, and I want to get this in because I want to share some tips. I
Yeah.
think you talked about, and just talk a little bit more about the tip for if you get pulled over.
Okay.
Right. And I want to know what is reasonable within our rights. So we want to talk about how to de-escalate.
Yeah.
The mannerisms, because unfortunately, I mean, we had this good back and forth banter, but the reality is the reality. It's still going to be our responsibility to coach our kids
Yeah.
on how to de-escalate this situation, because the main goal is to get home safe. So give us some tips on if you get pulled over,
Mhm.
how can you create an environment that most likely will allow you to leave there safe and sound.
Yeah, for sure. And for one, in no way I'm saying be a doormat, right?
Mhm.
You can be respectful and sit in your authority at the same time, right? You don't have to be sheepish. You don't have to let somebody walk all over you. You don't have to demean yourself. You don't have to do any of those things. You really don't. There's a certain professional way that you can carry yourself in a respectful manner where you can be confident in the way that you're moving and still moving in that confidence. You're not causing yourself to be disrespectful to somebody, right?
Mm.
So let's put that out there. Unfortunately, like in your example, some people are going to do what they're going to do regardless.
Sure, sure.
But to your question, the things that you can do is to one, know that you have rights as a human being and know that that somebody shouldn't be able to just take advantage of you.
Mhm.
But in knowing that, know that I'm going to comply with the legal things you're asking me for. So if somebody's asking you for your identification, that's a legal right that a police officer has to be able to ask you for your identification when you're on the side of the road. When they're
Oh,
asking for identification, they're asking because they want to be able to identify who the driver is and to just know who you are. Now they're going to take that information and they're going to search some stuff and look through some stuff, all that stuff. I don't want to go down that road, but that's the right. So
so
have,
cops can actually ask you that, and you have to give them your identification.
you can actually ask you that. And on the side of the road, there's a difference between somebody just walking up to you on the street and asking you for your ID. That's a total difference
Ah,
between and it does. I will say from state to state it can differ. So I won't say this is just carte blanche across the road. But for the most part, if you're in a vehicle and you're pulled over at a traffic stop and a police officer asks you for your identification, he does have the right to ask you for that ID, and you should give that ID. Some people want to watch this. I ain't got to give you nothing. All right, you can feel that way, but legally, he does have a right to be able to ask you for that ID to be able to identify the person who's driving the vehicle and to be able to make sure that you can legally drive that vehicle. You have a license. So having your license, having your registration, those are legal things that somebody's going to ask you for. So what you want to do is be in a position to be able to have that stuff to be able to give it to the officer. You want to keep yourself in a space where you're not making sudden movements, right? And I'm not saying you not to reach for something. I've seen some people go as far as announcing, "Hey, I'm about to reach for my wallet. Hey, I have a legal permit and I have a legal firearm in the car." I have seen people announce those things. That is a way to put the situation at ease to announce that this is what I'm going to do. Again, that's not going to clear everybody that's coming to you, but these are some things that I've taught my son. Yeah, before even getting to that point, when you're getting pulled over, back up a little bit. I tell my son, make sure the lights on the side of the vehicle, make sure your hands are somewhere where they can be seen. I'm not saying put your hands up. You can put your hands on the dash, you can put your hands on the steering wheel. If you have your hands in your lap, just keep them there, not making any sudden movements. And you want to have your license and registration, if you can get it before that, sitting right on the dashboard. So you don't have to make any sudden movements. You don't have to go in the glove compartment. You don't have to go up under, or you have to go in your pocket. You don't have to go up on your armrest in the car because some of those things can look like sudden movements.
yeah. I remember you told me that years ago, and ever since then, I've been doing it. Matter of fact, I did it in front of my son one time.
Mhm.
Dad, while you're doing this, I said, son, we don't know what the situation is going to be. To me, my job is to get you home safe, son.
Mhm.
And look, it was tough imagery
Yeah.
because, like your dad's a big guy and he got his hand on a dashboard, windows down, power off, telling his son, don't move, right? Just so we can make sure that the situation doesn't. And to me, that was always a tough because I've done it 2 or 3 times with him in the car. And I've done it with the girls in the car too. I put all the windows down and said, let them see inside the car. So that way we all know, our goal is to make it home. So one of the things that I wanted to also mention is, as parents, you want to teach your kids they have the right to remain silent. How does that play with you when you're a cop and someone doesn't want to speak back to you?
So if I'm side of the road and pulling over and just want to make sure I got the question clear, and you're asking them something and the person's not complying, give you any information back, as a police officer, it makes you feel like the person was trying to hide something from you, right? It draws some suspicion. Your spidey senses are going like, why does this person want to give me this information? They must be trying to hide something. So that's what it gives off. It gives off, you're trying to hide something. So let me be on a higher alert for myself. 1, 2, this person may have a criminal record. This person may be in trouble in some type of way, shape, or form. So let me be careful with the way I'm moving, because now I'm at a space where I'm looking for something that may be wrong. This person just seems like they're trying to withhold something from me.
But it is their legal right to remain silent.
Well, you say their legal right to remain silent, like they can remain silent or they have to remain silent?
No, they can't. Like a policeman comes to me and says, da da da, I can say to them, I'm exercising my legal right to remain silent.
You can. You can.
Okay. So I think, because I try to pull some homework in, and they want to share some tips with some parents out there, and you bounce off how that plays itself out in practicality. So we know when interacting with the police, you have the right to remain silent. It is your legal right. You have the right to refuse consent to a search.
Yes.
Right? And how does that make you feel? Yeah. I'm putting you on the spot, Los.
Yeah, no, it's good. You do have that right, unless there is some type of drug or some type of illegal smell. Alcohol, and I say alcohol, I mean drinking alcohol, not isopropyl rubbing alcohol. If there's a smell of alcohol, and or if there is a view of some type of illegal drug, then a police officer has the right to search the car without your consent.
Wow.
If there's an illegal drug, and again, it used to be marijuana, but marijuana is legal in a lot of places now. You see some type of illegal drug in the vehicle, you don't have to ask for a right to search that vehicle. If a person appears to be under the influence of alcohol, there are some questions that the police officer is going to ask. If they appear to be under the use of alcohol, the influence of alcohol, thank you. They're going to run you through some tests, and that gives you that right. They do have a right to run you through those tests. I want to back up and say they don't have a right to actually search your vehicle for that, but they do have a right to pull you out of the vehicle and to run you through those tests. If they see any drug or something that appears to be an illegal drug, they do have the right. Other than that, they do not have the right to search your vehicle without your consent. The tricky part here is, this is a good question.
Talk to us.
Some will ask the question. Some police officers will ask you the question if they can search the vehicle. And if you say yes, then they have the right to search it.
Of course.
Because you said yes, and they may have phrased it in a way that they do have the right when they do not. Also, in the midst of the search, if you say, I don't consent to this, they have to stop, even in the midst of the search.
Okay. See, this is why people need to listen to this podcast all the way to the end. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's some good stuff.
Yes.
You mentioned, because we won't be able to get through all of this role playing with your kids, right? And we want to teach, Black dads and tips that work with their children. So first and foremost, as a Black father, even as a child, understand you have the right to exercise, remain silent, but that does create some reaction from police officers. You have the right to refuse, your car not to be searched, right? And you have the right to an attorney.
Yes.
A lawyer. I think the right to a lawyer, everybody knows from all the TV shows. But we want to be holistic. We want to talk about what your rights are, how do you prepare for certain situations when dealing with cops, and then also if we can wrap it up with, what do you do after you've experienced an incident?
That's a good one.
Right?
I like.
So the role play.
Please stay on and listen to that one. If we were watching, listen. Yeah, good job. Because I'm gonna help you on that one. I'm gonna help
Yeah.
you.
So talk to me about the role play. Like, what do you think are some good role play exercises that I can do with my son or my daughter to have them prepared? We talked about the car, right? And I use that to this day. But just average, you're in a store, you're coming out, someone thinks you stole something, and the cop wants to talk to you. Like, talk to me through some role playing, because all my research tells me it's all about body language or interacting with the police. It's a balance between calm and knowing your rights. So what are some exercises that we can do with our children that you think would be like, oh, okay, you
Most
get
definitely.
understanding this?
And here, what I'm saying too, I always preface it with this: I'm not saying this is the answer,
Of
but
course.
this is an answer.
Yeah,
Right?
of course.
For one, I know we said the vehicle thing. I've actually gone through with my children in the vehicle, like with them being in the driver's seat and me approaching the car as a police officer. I've not only talked to them about it, I've physically, with my older children, this reminds me I need to do it with my younger children, they get a little bit older. Um, I've had them sit in the driver car seat while I'm acting as the police officer, pulling them over. So the things that I taught them, so that they can actually do those things in real time. So
That's good.
role playing. Say it again.
I said that's good.
So actually role playing, I'm approaching the vehicle and I'm asking them questions, and they get a chance to ask me some questions. They get a chance to comply. They get a chance to put the license on the top of the vehicle. They get a chance to have their hands in a place where you can actually see them. They get a chance to actually say, "Hey, I'm going to actually reach for my insurance and pull it out the driver's." So, and even in those senses, I know it can sometimes feel defenseless because I understand that. But even listen to what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm going to actually reach into my glove compartment and grab my insurance. I mean, that you're still giving the information, but that doesn't sound defeated. That doesn't sound like, oh, I'm cowardice. It's saying I'm going to reach into my glove compartment to grab the insurance. I'm going to grab an insurance. So I had them actually do those things. Some other good role playing would be sitting down and having a conversation with them as to if they are being questioned by a police officer and they haven't done anything wrong, to actually ask them certain questions and to be able to tell them how to answer these questions. I would tell my children to be honest. Because when you tell the truth, you only got to tell the truth once. When you lie, you got to tell that thing over and over and over and over again. Also, you don't have to defend the truth because the truth is going to defend itself. Again, some people you're going to deal with a jerk. Unfortunately, sometimes, I'm sorry. But my children, I'm telling them to be honest. I'm also telling them to say, hey, can I call my father? If you have time, my father or my mother, if you have time before that thing happens, call your mother or your father and leave the phone on. You can let the police officer over. You have that right. I have my mother and my father on the phone right now on speakerphone. I have my friend on the phone right now. I have my aunt on the phone right now. My uncle's on the phone right now, and have them listening in. A lot of times that will cause a police officer to behave in a better way if he or she was going to be somebody who's going to act like a jerk because they have a listening audience. Some record. I will say recording a police officer may cause them to feel a certain way, but you have the right to record it. And if you're recording it, most times somebody's going to behave in a way that they're not going to be out of pocket because they know you record. So my first and foremost, I'm telling them to be honest. To be honest,
Yeah.
and to not try to hide anything because you don't have anything to hide.
You got me with the calling and keeping on speakerphone. To be honest part, I'm more like, don't say a single word. Okay? Telling you to call your parents or you call
Uh-huh.
your attorney. Because unfortunately, I hear you, Los, and as two God-fearing men, you know what I mean? The truth don't need to defend itself because it's the creation of all life.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the truth changes depending on who's saying it.
Mm-hmm.
No, sir, this is not my bag. This young man said he's still. So I'm literally this. I'm more like, stay calm, call your parents. But I do like, and I do believe the truth defends itself, right? But I like the fact that you said if you can, call and leave it on speaker, which tells me and our listeners, if you have children, make sure you're the emergency contact on their phone so they don't gotta go flicking through their phone. They can click emergency or whatever on their phone and automatically calls you.
Mm-hmm.
I know the ACLU has an app called Mobile Justice as well. which can video record and automatically record any
Right.
police incidents. So I would definitely tell the listeners, find these mobile apps that can help your children when they experience an encounter. Hey, we're recording. Go ahead.
I gotta say this too with the truth piece. Now I hear you, especially with a child or a child who's younger. I totally agree. I'm gonna call my mom, call my dad, have you talk to them. The reason why I say tell the truth part, especially somebody who's of age, is there's this thing called fruits is a poisonous tree. So when a police officer pulls you over or questions you, they have to have some legal right to stand on, something legal to stand on to be able to build the case on.
Sure.
So if somebody is lying and they catch you in a lie, it gives the police officer the opportunity to move to accusatory questions.
Of course.
I know we go a little far, but
No, this is good.
if they ask you a question and they find out you're lying with the questions they're asking, it now gives the police officer a legal right to ask other questions that they have no right to ask if you're telling the truth.
But if I didn't say nothing
They
at
ask
all,
you questions that lead you. Say it again.
if I didn't say nothing to you at all, and that's why I choose to remain silent, you can't ask me any more questions.
You can't ask me any more questions, but some will say, all right, well, you ain't giving me no answers, then I'm gonna keep you here until I find out some information. I'm just saying.
Lost.
I'm
Say
just
it ain't
saying.
so, Lost. Say it ain't so.
I'm just saying.
Lost, I'm
Because
my baby.
if I can't legally identify who you are, then I can't let you go because I don't know who you are. So I'm just saying it can get tricky.
That's a fair point. But I think from this piece we talked about, again, I like the role playing exercises. I like the, even practicing, having the phone audio recorded. What are you going to say to a cop? I encourage all listeners to find out what your legal resources are.
Yeah.
Right. But let's talk, Los, with the time we have. I've experienced an encounter with someone in law enforcement. Right? What are my remedies after the fact? What can I do? How do I file complaints? Do the complaints fall on deaf ears?
Mm-hmm.
So
Great question. I'm glad we're wrapping up with this because I've informed people of this time and time again.
Sure.
Call the police station or go to the police station. Sometimes we can't go to it because maybe we're pulled over in a different state, blah, blah, blah. Call and contact or go by and ask to speak to a supervisor. And when speaking to the supervisor, let the supervisor know that I want this complaint documented. If you don't request for the complaint to be documented, then they can blow it off. And if they can get you off the phone and blow it off, then they do not have to document your complaint. If you get to a police officer or to a supervisor and they handle your information on the phone and you feel better and they appease you by listening to you, and you hang up the phone, goes nowhere. If you say, I want this complaint documented, that supervisor's responsibility is to document that complaint and to put that complaint into the file of the police officer. So what happens is, if a police officer continues to get different complaints filed against them, then they get into a position of being in trouble, suspension, losing dates, or possibly getting fired. But it builds up. So some people will say, I'm never going to do nothing. So if this police officer continues to be wrong and wrongfully doing things to people and nobody does anything, they continue to do it. But if you complain and say, I want this complaint documented, don't feel like, oh, it's documented, nothing's going to happen. That's going to go into this police officer's file. And if this police officer already has other things going on, they have to investigate it. They have to look into it, and they have to take action once it gets to a certain amount of complaints. Definitely file the complaint and definitely say that you want your complaint documented, and definitely do that with a supervisor and not just with someone who gave you the ticket or the person who pulled you over, because they can't try to blow you off.
So if I file the complaint, is there like a number that I get? How do I know that it's actually been filed? How do I know that?
Ask for some type of number, some type of documentation. You can also ask them to send you a copy of the actual complaint as well. So I want this complaint to be documented, and I'd like you to send me a copy of this complaint to this address, this email address, and have them send you a copy of that complaint as well.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So I think the best we try to talk a little bit about this topic, and we're going to be here for a while, right? So we know we're going to always address certain current events. There's so many things happening in the world. I think one thing I want to leave with folks is, again, not all cops are bad cops, but the reality of it is, I'm going to stand on this, is I'm very clear in my mind that the system is not made to support people of color, right? As much as I believe America is a land of opportunity, it's a great country, the system itself is still not designed for people of color. And as much as I don't want an adversarial relationship, I have to recognize and call the truth, that it is not fair and equitable to us. So we're trying to create some conversation, some dialogue, recognizing that this is an unavoidable truth. It may be ugly, may be uncomfortable. We still have to be prepared, because at the end of the day, the goal is still to get home safe.
Definitely.
And if anyone has experienced this, we encourage you to seek psychological help. I mentioned earlier that the police is not the start of it. From the time we're young Black kids going through an educational system, we probably experienced so many things that have jaded us, that have kind of created some trauma. So Carlos gave you some remedies. I'm also saying, if your child has experienced any type of negativity in law enforcement, don't brush it off like we normally would do. Let them talk to someone so that they can learn some of the coping skills, heal, and still be viable citizens. So, Los, I'm handing it back to you to take us home, baby.
Pretty much from there, man, I'll say very similar to going back to, if you listened in earlier to the conversation with Cam Newton, his father. His father was there to stand up for him. One of the most important things you could do is be there for your child, to be able to have a conversation with them, to have this dialogue, to give them information to be safe, but also to have the dialogue with them so that they can also come back to you with questions, so that they can come back to you with information. If something does happen, or if they do see something on social media or see something in person, they have an open space to be able to come in. Hey, Dad, hey, Mom, remember when we talked about this? This is what happened, and I'm not sure how I would respond, or I don't know how to feel about this. Create this open dialogue and conversation so you can be there to be able to have this conversation with your child. First and foremost, like Rod said, you want to get home safe. You want to be able to get home safe, to be able to deal with, to lodge a complaint, to have a conversation, to go and form a legal complaint about the things that happen to you. You want to be able to get home and be safe, to be able to do those things. So this information that I give to my children, the information that we're giving out here, is for you to be safe. It's not for you to be taken advantage of. It's for you to be safe, to get yourself into a space, to be able to go through the proper channels, to do something for yourself, to protect yourself. So Black Dad Unfiltered, man, thank you all for joining in, for watching in, for listening in. We couldn't get into everything. If you have some questions that you want to post or send to us about this, or something that you want us to hear more so about, we can dive into that as well. But we appreciate you. We appreciate you from Black Fathers. We appreciate you for chiming in. We appreciate you for listening in. And this is a topic that we polled, and this was one of the higher topics that people definitely want to hear about. So it's not something we just choose to talk about. Like that Unfiltered. I love being here, man. And I love that we have people that are opportunity to be able to share our experience and to learn from each other and to learn from you all. I'm Carlos V. Spencer, here with my guy, Coach Rod.
Coach Rod.
Y'all be blessed.
Peace.